Hey, Melissa.
Hey, Amy.
So today we have two people in one, two very special guests today on our podcast, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves in alphabetical order by last name.
A little exercise here. Mallory, I think that's you.
Yes, I was gonna say, I guess that's me. So, hello, I am Mallory Lattanze. So, thank you, Melissa and Amy, for having us. Missy and I were joking around about how our duo is meeting the Dyslexia Duo.
Yes, that's right.
So,
So now we're a quad.
yes. So I am here in Houston, Texas, but I'm originally from Metro Atlanta area. But I've lived in Texas for, it'll be 13 years next month. So I'm definitely claimed Houston as home, but I am a former elementary school teacher, pre-K, kinder, first and second, a few years in each. And then it was time for me to do what I knew I wanted to do and be a dyslexia specialist. And so being here in Houston, went through Nyhouse Education Center and became a dyslexia therapist. And my life has now brought me to a fantastic dyslexia school, the Briarwood School, and I'm their director of admissions. And I love it. I'm surrounded by like-minded people. I still do a little private therapy on the side, president of Houston branch IDA. So advocacy is still a big part of me. Never thought I'd be in admissions, but I always tell people I love giving the family the great news that your child's life is about to change for the better. So pretty amazing.
Very good.
I always think of that. It's the great news too. But then sometimes I've had parents be like, I'm so nervous. I just don't even know. Like they just get really, really upset and worried. But I always think of it as good news too.
Yes.
Love that. Well, I'm Missy Purcell, and I am from Georgia, born and raised in Georgia. I have visited Texas a few times, but this is my home base. I also, true to fashion, went to UGA to get my teaching degree, and I taught in the public school setting for over a decade. I taught elementary and middle school during that time, and most of my time was spent in what we call an inclusive setting or a co-taught setting. I left teaching when my children, well, I left teaching for the first time when I first had kids. And then I briefly went back thinking I was ready. Little did I know that my youngest child was in preschool and was not ready indeed to go back because he was about to embark on what I now know is his journey with dyslexia. It became really challenging for me to be in the classroom and advocate for him. And I really turned into a full-time advocate for my child after I left the classroom. And I have spent the bulk of his childhood advocating both for him and other kids with dyslexia. It's led me into this path, and probably part of this conversation today is due to the fact that I entered in that road. I am married to my college sweetheart, Mark. We do have 3 children. Matthew is not the only one. We have Harrison and William, who are older than him. I have a college kid. He finished his freshman year this year. And I also have 2 fur babies that I'm hoping will behave very much as we have this great conversation, Barkley and Bauer. And I spend a lot of my time when I'm not advocating, cheering my kids on a baseball field or maybe going to a band concert because those are their or out of school activities, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit about me.
So I know our listeners are probably wondering, why do we have both Mallory and Missy on together? So can y'all kind of explain your relationship and how this started?
Yeah. So thanks to, I think it was still Twitter back then. So Twitter X, we both knew about Learning Ally, and at the time I was coming up with a presentation topic to submit a proposal for their annual dyslexia conference. And I do a lot of advocacy. I'm someone with dyslexia, so I had that perspective. I was a dyslexia therapist, but I also wanted the parent perspective and just really genuine. Like I can definitely make it up. I've talked to a lot of parents, but I want it to be from an actual parent. So after following Missy, and knowing that we are both from Georgia, what does they say? I slipped into her DM.
You slid into her DMs. Yeah.
Yes. and
She really
and I was just like, hi, I'm also from Georgia. And, thinking, please like me. Please don't think I'm a stalker. And told her just my idea and was like, would you like to do this with me? And we did. And it was fabulous. And just, Missy can tell more, but it was very natural. Just how we were collaborating and our ideas meshing together. We had so much fun. Like, presenting that we did it again, and then we did it again, and then we did it again. And 3 years we were presenting for Learning Ally multiple times, but also Alta. And I don't know, I feel like we've done other things. But all to say is it took us 3 years to finally meet each other. Even when I would go back home, I'd be busy with family stuff. And we met in Dallas, but it's been awesome. So Missy, I don't know if you can add more.
That's perfect. No, I mean, really, that's exactly what happened. And it was great because during that time period that we met, it was kind of on the tail end of the pandemic when people were on social media a lot and there was a lot of advocacy going on. It was when the world was really realizing how damaging structured literacy was for our children. So there was lots of educational banter on Twitter X at that time. And so I was over there kind of telling my advocacy journey. And just reaching an audience that way. And we did, our worlds just collided and it's been neat. We before we knew you guys, we would joke about how we're this Georgia Texas duo. So when I heard about you guys, I was like, they're like this dyslexia duo, that they're a real duo. And so it's neat this is a really cool moment right now, this full circle moment.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So I wonder if you guys could briefly share I know Mallory told a little bit about her personal journey before our show started, but if you could share a little bit about your personal journey with dyslexia, what led you to this space of advocacy, and then I'd like Missy to answer the same.
Sure. So I grew up in Metro Atlanta, and my mom, so I'm the oldest of 3. So my mom didn't have anyone to compare to. And, but she knew something was not necessarily wrong, but like, this is not normal. Like she knew where my peers were at. So even in kindergarten and first grade, I was just off. And again, she couldn't put words to it. So finally, after much advocacy, she got me evaluated because at the time every teacher was saying, oh no, like she's petite, she's young, she tries hard. And to get big perspective, like girls, as you know, don't get identified as much. And so I was getting my accolades from being like the good golden girl, like the star student. So everyone, you don't know until you know. I have great memories of my teachers, but they were like, no, you don't need to test her. She's fine. Just give her more time. She likes school. Well, I also was throwing up every single day for the first week of school for 5 years in a row. School was a place of failure for me. So I finally got identified in 2nd grade, but they identified me under specific learning disability and reading because back then, and kind of somewhat Missy can tell a little bit more, Georgia would not say the word dyslexia. But I have stacks of IEP paperwork, progress reports. And there's even one that it was like, if you take the words out of the math problems, Mallory can do it. I mean, if that doesn't scream dyslexia, I don't know what, but they were like, no, we're not going to label her dyslexia. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of talk about dyslexia. However, there was a lot of dyslexia private schools, but there was no correlation at the time because, again, my mom didn't know until she knew. She just knew, okay, this is what we have. What can we do? She reached out. I was in special ed. I then couldn't read the math problem. So then I was in special ed for math. I was also in speech for a short time. You name it, I was in it. I had a tongue thrust, so then I had to go through myofunctional therapy. I mean, you check all the boxes. I was that girl. And so I was that girl when you put them in the class, you're like, oh, okay, we have Mallory in my class. And I was really sweet. They knew that I'd be a challenge. And so fast forward a little bit to 5th grade. So my 5th grade teacher is literally the reason why I wanted to be a teacher. She was the main catalyst. I still keep in touch with her. So shout out to you, Julie Warner. There was something about her. Well, fast forward even more. I go into we'll talk a little bit about what happened in high school and that and learning experience of that. But when I was teaching in Charleston, South Carolina, I got to be good friends with her son. And I then went back to her house and she was like, I think you're old enough now. I'm going to tell you the real reason why I was your 5th grade teacher. And I was like, what? She goes, your class was made up of a lot of other special kids, but we didn't tell any of the parents. Do you realize that that was my first year teaching 5th grade? She got pulled from kindergarten, which I remember, but then I forgot. But they pulled her out of kindergarten because they're like, we need someone who knows foundations of literacy and who has that like really like the patience and like just calmness and nurturing for this special class. And so I was in that class, and it makes sense now because I wanted to be like her. She understood me. I feel like I really learned. That was the last year that I threw up every single day. So it was a perfect transition into middle school, and that's why they did that. So shout out to my school that did that and all of that. But and then I was in high school. I didn't get a re-eval in 8th grade. So I learned a lot about evaluations. And a big part of what I advocate for is now evaluations, but I was due for a re-eval my 8th grade year, which was of course going into high school. And my mom is from Argentina. She speaks Spanish, but I do not speak Spanish. My dad's American, all of that. So they said, due to the mother speaking another language, it would provide an unfit testing environment for Mallory. That was their excuse. My mom basically was like, in my adult years when I asked her about that, it's because we have a piece of paper in all my stacks of paper. And she said, well, it's because that was their way of saying we don't have the funding, we don't have the resources, we don't know what to do with her at the high school level. So I started to really advocate for secondary. I've done presentations on secondary. Like that's where that stemmed from, is because I didn't get any support in high school. And it led me to cheating. And the one class I was very good at cheating in was Spanish. And Argentine Spanish is different from what you learn. And so they even called, my mom was like, stop helping your daughter because that's not the Spanish that we're teaching her. So it was like a big old thing. But then no one told my mom that I needed a 504 plan into college. So another learning lesson on why I advocate so much for this. So I didn't have an IEP because they basically denied that. Went through high school struggling with every tutor you can imagine. I had the same tutor, Miss Hoffman, from 2nd grade, even through college. She wasn't dyslexia trained, but she did teach me a lot of tricks and like mnemonic devices, things that still help our dyslexic kids. But I didn't have a 504. I go to University of Alabama. I have to preference before Saban was coach. So it was a lot easier to get into, and I'm not ashamed to say that. Okay, not a lot of people from Georgia went there. My freshman year, I go up to the Office of Disabilities, and I'm like, look, I am trying. And they look at me like, oh, you poor little, whatever, sorority girl, you're just partying too hard. I'm like, no, I am really trying here, and my grades are suffering. And they denied accommodations. And I was like, look, here are all my documentation. They're like, sorry, you didn't come in with a 504. I'm like, what is a 504? I learned all of this my freshman year of college. Didn't know what to do. I get through college, but I did fail. That's a whole nother story. I suffered through college, failed, learned a lot from that, finally graduated. And it really made me stronger because I persevered. I actually didn't even go to my college graduation because I was like, nope, I'm heading to the real world. I just want to be a teacher. I just want to be the person I'm meant to be. So through all that struggle, it not only made me a stronger advocate in different facets of like just advocacy. I learned a lot from my mom. I started talking to her more when I got older. I knew I needed classroom experience before I went into dyslexia. I thought that was important. And I didn't really know how that was going to look. I just was like, let me teach the young ones. Let me capture them when they're young. So I actually came out of Alabama with a really heavy Southern accent, like one does. And when I was teaching kindergarten, I really trained myself to speak more clearly and say the sounds more clearly. And again, not even knowing that like I was preventing myself from saying the uhs, you know, and that drawn out sound that Southern accents do, like that structured literacy teaches us to do. I just knew I don't think that's right. So I always had this like indication or this like I guess intuition of like there's something more to this that no one's ever taught me, but why am I just now picking it up myself? Okay, that's my long story.
My favorite part is the Southern drawl.
Yes.
I think we all can relate. Well, yeah, well, I'll pop in and share my journey here. I'm an educator, and I taught, like I said, for over a decade, and mainly elementary, and I did a few years in middle school, but almost the entire experience was an inclusion setting. And so I had a lot of experience working with kids who weren't perhaps performing to the grade level standard and supporting them and working alongside special education teams to support these kids. So it was something that was really near and dear to my heart that I definitely cared about. And as happens in schools, when you do it one year and you're kind of good at it, then you're kind of in that path, right? So it just kind of followed me throughout my entire career. And I learned so much from those kids. But ironically, I remember even as a teacher thinking, it was frustrating that sometimes I knew kids weren't getting what they needed. It didn't matter how nice I was or how nice the other teachers were. I just knew, and I even made comments like, if I ever have a child with special needs, like they're not going to go here. All right, so let's fast forward a few years. I've got 3 kids, and 2 of my oldest kids kind of went through this same school just fine. In fact, one's gifted and one is kind of an unlabeled gifted, and they just kind of did great, bouncing through school. And then my third enters, and he left preschool only knowing one letter sound. It was his M for his name, Matthew. So he could do Matthew. He had a really spiky profile. He could memorize things. He went to a little church preschool, and he memorized the Lord's Prayer, but he didn't know any of his letter sounds, right? So it was this very interesting for me, even watching him. I thought, this doesn't make any sense. I know he's not like his brothers, because none of them, both of them left preschool, what I would say kindergarten ready, gets to preschool and starts to struggle immensely with language and reading. The teachers are saying, it's okay, he's got a June birthday. The only problem with that for me was I have a May and an April baby too. So that's pretty much the same thing. Because if you've ever taught, your spring, summer babies, they're a special breed. And I also said I would never have spring, summer babies, and I have 3 of them. So I did a lot of things I wasn't going to do. But he just struggled. And I heard all the excuses. Kindergarten, it was he has a summer birthday. In first grade, I started getting louder thanks to I had an inside friend who said, you need to start speaking up. And they had at this point already put him into a program called Reading Recovery, which I'm sure we're all aware of. And it was, not what he needed, but he had not received any testing, any evaluation. Nobody had done any official testing to see what's going on with this kid. And so I was given what I was told is the most comprehensive intervention that we have in our county. Reading Recovery. So we did that for 20 weeks. I call that 20 wasted weeks. And during that time period, I know I've offended a lot of people in that world with that statement.
I mean, we're on a podcast where people aren't seeing my face, but every time you see Reading Recovery, it's like I smelled something bad.
Right. It's a trigger word, right? And it was for me. And I knew it pretty early on. And I mean, about halfway through, I got a letter saying that he wasn't trying anymore, that I should give him a pep talk, and they were just going to keep plowing through. Think about that. Like, where else in the world, when something's not working at the halfway point, do we go, we're just going to keep going and see if it works? And you should just give him a little attaboy talk and get him really pumped up, and perhaps maybe read some more to him at home, and let's see if we can get this to the finish line. Obviously that didn't.
That it's his fault and not theirs, or not the program's fault.
his fault, my fault. Cause I mean, I do
Mhm.
have this letter that was kind of like, are you reading with him at home? Perhaps
Mhm.
you could encourage him. Yes, it was a lot of blame on the child, and he's 6,
Mhm.
6, 7 years old. So,
Mhm.
you know, what's he supposed to do? And it's the teacher's job to teach. And to know when something's not working. So many failures were happening for him that I can look back and clearly see now, but when I was in the middle of it, I didn't know. So me being a former balanced literacy teacher of this county I taught in was very entrenched in balanced literacy. And I was like an observational classroom. I was really good at it. And I started learning. I mean, I joined that Facebook group, the sites of reading for teachers, and I was like, this is me. There's like hundreds of thousands of me. And then I joke I could probably have a doctorate in instructional literacy. I took trainings from anybody and everybody because I wanted to be the most knowledgeable person in the room when I went into my next meeting for my child. And what was so surprising to me along this journey for advocating for him was that what I was learning wasn't super hard to learn. It's a method of instruction. So as a former educator, I thought, okay, I missed out on this method. I learned something else, but I can do this. And I'm not anyone super special. I did go to UGA, Mallory. Um,
That's okay.
a little banter here with our school. However, I'm a teacher like everyone else, and teachers should be lifelong learners. And I took it upon myself to learn more. And the more I learned, the more I realized that he was unfortunately a victim in a really terrible system that was not doing their job to support him. But he wasn't the only one. My child is not a unicorn. He is one of many that was being failed. And so for me, the journey began when I began to realize how to help my kid. And what I was doing was helping. I started finding people that could teach him to read, but then I started advocating for his rights under IDA, and I pushed hard. We ended up doing fine, but I got my baby out of the burning building, but there were a gazillion more left behind. And so the best way to fix that problem is to fix what's wrong with the system. And that is to advocate fiercely for teachers to get the training they deserve, to get the support they deserve, and the tools they deserve. Because we all know as teachers, when we have what we need and we're successful, like that's just good for everybody, right? Teachers, you don't go
Right.
into this to get rich. You go into this usually because you care about kids. So you want to help kids. And if you have the best tools and the best training to help kids, then you're just going to do better. And so for me, that's where it began, was just fighting for my kid and then realizing there's so many more. So I'm not going to go back in the classroom and teach. I'm better on this side of advocating for system change. So
Well,
um,
and
I
I think about teachers who want the training, they end up having to pay out of pocket in one of the lowest paying professions, degreed professions that are out there, because districts say, yeah, that'd be great if you get that training. We can't afford it. So you'd have to pay for it yourself. I hear that a lot. And it's like a little vicious cycle. Teachers want to do well, they don't get paid enough to do it. The district's not going to train them, but you just keep using this useless curriculum that we're providing you to instruct our kids in. I didn't mean
I
to.
have a Oh, no, it's good. I just had a follow-up question. Do you feel like things have changed since you've started this process? Either one of you, do you feel like things have changed in Georgia? I know that in Houston, Texas, I kind of know how Texas does things. But as far as Georgia is concerned, do you feel like things have changed any?
yeah, I mean, yes and no. Here's the way it's a coin, right? Yes, you know what? We have a dyslexia bill that was passed in 2019. It went into effect this school year. It mandates that every child will be screened for dyslexia K2. It mandates that there will be a meeting to discuss the results of that. There'll be communication with parents to discuss the results of that. There should be progress monitoring with the intervention. There should be testing if that is determined that it's necessary. So there's a plan, there's a decision tree, there's a dyslexia handbook. We also have an early literacy bill that went into effect that should shape and impact our tier 1 instruction, which is this one's a K3 mandate that all teachers will be trained in structural literacy and that will implement structural literacy in their classrooms. And will only use resources that are aligned with the science of reading. And 3Qing was actually banned this legislation season, along with removing reading recovery from the Georgia Code. So yes, legally, we've got lots of great things going on, but you guys all know what I'm about to say. I'm sure anyone listening, if you're in this space, my new favorite word is implementation, right? So, and accountability. So we have right now, we're in that terrible phase of growing pains, and it is really kind of ugly and messy. I go to meetings quite frequently in districts, and I just see all the ways that they're interpreting law or not interpreting law. And so the next phase of this, I think, is, accountability. I know Texas, you guys are light years ahead of us, but I'm sure you're probably still facing some of this. I know. I think it depends on the district you're in. And we do have that lovely thing here that a lot of us Southern states have, which is local control. And so in Georgia, what that means is you got 190 plus districts just all reinventing the wheel to been to local control. So, everyone loves local control when it benefits them. In this case, I kind of hate it because I wish there was just more oversight from the top down. And what we're seeing, I think, is states that have had a little more success or creativity with top down mandates. They're seeing better results. Like Louisiana, is the darling of NAEP this year. And it's because they figured out a way to kind of work around local control and really get everyone aligned to the same instruction. They're using statewide curriculums, and, they're really seeing a lot of success. So hopefully we can learn some from our other Southern neighbors going forward.
There's a report that's out there, like Louisiana's 77% of Louisiana's fourth grade met or exceeded their whatever the exam that they take.
Yes.
For reading.
Yes.
I mean, that's huge. Louisiana.
I know. They're doing some cool things around, not only the foundational skills, but I think the knowledge piece, which is the other side of the reading rope. And so I think that, and they have a statewide, I think, social studies curriculum where they're really building a lot of that knowledge. And I think they've gotten a little creative with the way they're doing their state testing as well to make sure that the passages are aligned with the knowledge they've taught kids. So that we're actually assessing comprehension and not a lack of knowledge, which is a great big conversation to have one day in this space. But yeah, so yes, we've made great. I'm ever an optimist. So yes, we've made great progress. We just have some more mountains to climb.
Awesome. Mallory, what about you? What are your insights to when things were not working? I mean, definitely your own story. You kind of knew after a while things weren't working for you, but then, sometimes you think, oh, it's just unique to me. When did you realize, oh, this is other people as well?
So I knew of the dyslexia schools in Houston. At the time, my parents, that wasn't a financial choice, unfortunately, at the time. But I knew that existed. Did I know dyslexia and the terminology? No, not really. Not for a while, to be honest with you. And it wasn't taught in undergrad. Even when I got my master's degree, which was 2017 to 2019, they were still teaching about reading recovery. Like I actually did my internship, my last teaching internship from Alabama. I did it in New Zealand. And so where reading recovery started. And New Zealand is one of the top, I'm putting air quotes, like smartest countries. Even at the time they were ranked as like in the top 5, top 10. I don't know. I can't remember, many years ago. I don't know where they stand now. All to say is that people looked at it. It's like, well, New Zealand, Kiwis are really, really smart. They must have something, going for them. This reading recovery must be something. And, but it's so much more than that. So there was this huge misconception, but I knew that there was more than just me just by when I started teaching, like as a classroom teacher. I didn't know how much. I didn't know that it was like, 1 in 5 people. I didn't know. And I think there's a lot of kids, even to this day, like when they come to the Briarwood school and they go to a dyslexia school and they're surrounded by so many people like them, or they go into a dyslexia intervention class and they're looking around and they're even in their small group and they're like, I'm not the only one. It's pretty amazing. But what my experience was I did feel like I was the only one growing up because I was in special ed, but they put me with kids that were cognitively a lot lower than me because it was just one resource class, just probably by schedules, in like our grade. And I remember it was actually a really big room, and they had the individual desk, and we were placed in a circle. And Missy talked about this, like, oh, my son just needed more practice. That's what she was told. That's what that they were telling us is, oh, they just need extra practice. And they would give us these packets and go over, and like they would do the round robin reading. And I'm like, I don't know how to read this. You got to teach me how to read it before I can even practice. But that was that was like one of the biggest misconceptions back then. And I think it's gotten better. You don't see as much round robin anymore, but it still exists. I think the theory of more practice, that it's now led to they need more repetition, which is different. But I think we're making some shifts. But I will say, I've taught in Georgia, I've taught in South Carolina. I did, of course, did internships in Alabama, and now I'm in Texas. So I have a perspective of when people here in Texas complain like, oh, we're so behind, we're so behind. I'm not saying that we still have a lot to do, but my South Carolina friends are like, you're in a whole new universe. Like, we have nothing. We are decades, as Missy says, light years. And so I'm very grateful, and it makes me appreciate a lot of what we have. And it steers my thinking and mind shift of less complaining and like what is my center of control, and I know I can't save them all. It really helps with my sanity, but also what can I do for other states? And I think that's where I went out more publicly with advocacy, is because I can't just keep it here in Texas, right? Like I like meeting Missy and having these connections in different states. They reach out to me, and I'm really appreciative of it. I got a chance to speak in Mobile, Alabama, and it was amazing. And I felt like I was going back to where the state that denied me, and said, no, we're not going to help you, like, go away, figure it out yourself. Now the University of Alabama is developing CALS. When I found that out, I was like crying. I was like, what? And so it's just, all to say, I guess, is that yes, every state is working on something, but I will say, being a Georgia girl and being like, teaching elsewhere, I'm very appreciative of what Texas has brought. And I do think that we are a model state. I really do.
Very good. Very good.
I agree.
Yeah. No, go ahead. I'm trying to figure out where we are, because Greg will cut this stuff out.
Okay.
Love it.
I think I was going to ask the next question
Yeah, go
about
ahead.
being an
You do
educator.
it. You ask the next question.
Okay, so I would like to ask both of you, as educators and advocates, because you both are, what have you observed as the most common misconception teachers have about dyslexia?
Oh, can I go here?
Yes.
I have spent this month talking to parents, or maybe even gone to a few IEP meetings, and goodness, one of the most, and this was true even for Matthew, this was one of his biggest hurdles for people even identifying him and then getting him help, is that you can't read if you're dyslexic.
Right.
Like, they just think they literally can't read at all. That is, it is like this, it's almost like because they can read some, then they can't be dyslexic. And it's like, no, you do realize they can read. They just often have very big, like, weaknesses in some critical skills to keep advancing in this space. They need support so they can continue to advance. And a lot of our kids with dyslexia have amazing abilities to cope in a system that was never designed for them. And I think Mallory is a testament to that, right? A lot of them will just keep going, but it comes at a cost to them, which is where the comorbidities for dyslexia come in. And even when those comorbidities begin to set in for kids, our teachers just are not trained to know and identify. They don't know what anxiety looks like in a child with dyslexia. They don't know what maybe ADHD looks like alongside of dyslexia, or depression. And some even severe cases where kids actually have mental health issues because of the lack of support within their school systems. And so for me, it's the not understanding the profile. And I think the reason that that is so tricky for teachers because is that dyslexia, we know, has a spiky profile. You know, my son is a great example of this. He could read the word diamond, but not the word the. And so
Right.
as a teacher who's not trained, you're like, you're just messing with me. You're just being lazy. You're not trying hard enough. You know that word. Why don't you just try a little harder? Why don't you use your little, say the
Your
first
little word box,
slide.
or you just
Yep.
read this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I will never forget one of my son's teachers calling me one morning or actually one afternoon because they had spent all morning reviewing some critical skills. At this point, he was getting some intervention and he had known them that morning, but in the afternoon when she went to do the encoding assessment, guess what? He
Gone.
bombed it. I mean, bombed it. And she was crying on the phone. And I wasn't crying because by this point I was in full like raging mama bear advocate for the whole world, mode. And I just said, that's dyslexia. That's what it is. Like he obviously, what that should tell you is he hasn't mastered the skills that you were working on. So he's going to need some more intense intervention in those skills. So now you know what your reverse drills are for tomorrow, right? You're going to go back and that's what you're going to do before we pace ourselves forward. And I'm not even the dyslexia interventionist, guys. I'm the parent, right? And I'm using these words and I'm thinking, this is the person educating my child. So to me, that is one of the biggest obstacles is that what people think dyslexia is not at all what it is because of the way it presents and the training needed to make sure teachers just understand the profile and then can therefore support the profile is lacking. I mean, I just realized here in Georgia with all our great laws, my district is giving teachers a 1-hour dyslexia training.
Woo.
Wow.
Well, and then I think to build on what you're saying, that dyslexia, and I know that, we talk about Texas and how, things are kind of moving and grooving, but when teachers don't get enough training in what dyslexia looks like, they go, well, when they're trying to identify it in the classroom, like, well, he performs very differently than this child. That is the spectrum of
Yes.
dyslexia. Even within families, that is the spectrum of dyslexia. Strengths and weaknesses are going to be different.
100%. Yes. And like we can't even compare them to other kids with disabilities. I've even heard this one where it's like, oh, well, they're not like the other kids. As
Right.
if they, okay, so they don't need support then because their disability
Because all special
differently.
ed kids are the
Right.
same.
Right. Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
because theirs isn't like, well, that's true because you know what? This is the spectrum of dyslexia. And there's also a spectrum of autism and a spectrum of a cognitive, delay. So there's a spectrum on all of that, but and it may look very different, but it doesn't negate their extreme need for supports and services. Because when we don't support them and serve them, what happens to our children is very scary and very hard to remediate long term.
I think that people have a hard time remembering what it was like to be a child in a classroom too. And I think that difficulty leads to some of these misconceptions and thinking about, was anything ever hard for you? What did you do when things were hard for you? Think about, okay, if math was hard for you, how did you behave? How did you perform? What would you want the teachers to do? How would you want them to support you? I think sometimes some people forget that aspect of it too.
I had a principal years and years ago. So I was still in my 20s doing dyslexia. Like it was probably mid to late 20s though, when this conversation came up. And I was reviewing it with the principal and she goes, well, this child doesn't seem to present this difficulties in the same way. And she goes, Aimee, you're not the Army. It's not a be all you can be. You can't support them all. I'm like,
Oh my
and
God.
even, as a young, uneducated, newish dyslexia teacher, I'm sitting there going, is she right? She's not right. Is she right? She's not right. Because I'm young and she's this much more experienced principal. And I'm thinking, what do I know? Well, but I know this,
Yes, you did know. You did know. Yeah.
I didn't
It's
know what to say. I'll say that's what the whole time.
the head against the palm moment.
Sure. Sure. So, we've got Mallory doing the advocacy, we've got Missy doing advocacy also, but y'all are coming from two different aspects. Or in your opinions, how can parents and educators work together to support our dyslexic students?
Okay, so from my experience, it's kind of what you kind of said, Aimee, is there's a lot of blaming. So the secondary teachers will blame it on the elementary school teachers, and the elementary school teachers will blame it, on the system. And I'm not saying that the system needs work, but there's just a source of blame. And again, it goes back to like what can I do? And I learned this a lot as a dyslexia interventionist, like in a really large public school. I had to advocate for my own self and for my own kids so that I could serve more, and do more. But I feel like it starts with communication that builds to trust. So let me take a step back. I find that a lot of parents put too much trust in their schools.
Yeah.
And the schools also, they actually do somewhat know a little bit more than the parents. Now, I'm all for like parent choice and all that, but they need to communicate why they think the way that they think. I have been so surprised that there are parents who get their child an evaluation. Step one, great. You have all this information, but then they don't read it. They don't do their research. They're like, I have no idea what that is. And I'm not saying that a parent has to go into this ARD meeting or this eligibility meeting knowing everything, but it's like they put so much trust on the school and they don't do the research or come up even with questions and then see, can the school answer it or not? And so that is really shocking. And so I think parents have a lot of responsibility on their own. Listen to your gut. You don't have to have all the questions. You don't have to have all the information, but you got to start somewhere. Don't go in blind, and don't think that the school has all the answers. Then on the reverse side, the school, I don't know if manipulation is too harsh of a word, but I think that they're put in a position because of their higher ups or what, and but they aren't always giving the full picture. And
Yeah.
so I think they're protecting themselves somewhat. And I think that a lot of it is, teachers can't always say the things. Like when I would come to meetings, I'm like, I got to keep my job, right? Or they're going to make my job a lot harder if I'm not going to lose my job. But I think there needs to be more of a safe place and more of, I want to have all the information, because there are school districts that actually can provide a lot more than but they're not saying it. And now the parent has to go and find it themselves. And so again, there needs to be some, I guess transparency is really the better word. There needs to be a more transparency on both sides, better communication to build that trust. Because right now all I hear is that, I don't trust the district and these parents don't know what they're talking about. Here's some crazy mom, here's some crazy dad. And so if you really want to be effective, if you really want to work together, you both got to do your own parts, because I see it on both sides. And it's really hard for me as an advocate to just blame it on the schools, but I see a lot of parents that are just going there blind. And I'm just wondering, like, why didn't you do something about it? Go, even if you don't know the resources, then, you can do a Google search, but I'm not saying Google will have everything, but there are IDA branches. Go to your IDA branch. Use ChatGPT. That's probably better than like a Google thing, but you just start somewhere, and then find groups. We're in an age of social media. Find, local advocacy groups, moms of kids that just got diagnosed. At the very least, look at your diagnosis and find a mom group and then say, I have no idea what I'm doing. What is my step one? But parents got to step it up. Schools got to step it up.
It's interesting. You made me think of, I had a teacher, no, I had a parent who told me that she had thought that her child was dyslexic, and she went to the school and the school's like, oh no, we don't see it. This is their score on this is their score on that. They just need to work a little harder, stronger, faster, whatever. And I can remember she told me that the classroom teacher reached out to her on the sly and said, I think your daughter is dyslexic. You need to request the test because I'm not being allowed to. And I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. We still have areas where campuses are saying, nope, they're not dyslexic and you can't say anything. You can't request it. And so we have some of those teachers that are going through a backdoor
That was
process.
me. That was me. I feel like I should have had my own personal business card. I am Mallory Lattanze. Here is my cell phone number and personal email. That is exactly what I did. It's not a lie that I've known about the Briarwood School for a long time because I sent kids like 10 years ago as a public school educator. But isn't it sad because by law it says that teachers can request. Anyone can request. So for the school to take that right away from the teacher, again.
And who better than to request that assessment than the teacher who works with that child maybe anywhere from 4 to 8 hours a day? You know? Missy, what are your thoughts?
Oh my gosh, goodness. You know, I am a parent. I'm also an educator. And so it's funny. I'm the person now that people say you should call Missy and she'll help you. So the people in the building are like, there's a person in the community. And so, but it's still so sad, right? I agree with you. It shouldn't be this way. Like if we think a kid's got a problem, you know, IDA does say there's a child find clause that says if you suspect a disability, it's not just you should test. It says it's imperative that you test to see if they do have a disability. And so the fact that, you know, we still have a system, and this system is still very much alive and well in Georgia as well. I'm actually currently working with a family right now at this very moment who the system is saying that their child does not qualify for an IEP and they have a diagnosed medical code of dyslexia and it is having an educational impact. And so it is very frustrating. So I'm going to echo, trust your gut. I'm going to echo, be clear and communicate. I'm going to echo, do your homework. This is a little hard because everyone, I think I'm a little lucky because I'm a former educator and certain things make sense to me just because it's my field. That doesn't always happen for every parent, hence the need for, I think, advocates in this space because they can help kind of translate the lingo of the schools, right? That is really hard to do on your own. But reach out to someone who knows more than you do. If you can't do that on your own, seek out people. There are lots of great people out there who will help you for free or for very cost-effective ways. And so, like Mallory said, reach out to groups. Oh my gosh, we have some of the best dyslexia groups. Actually, that's how I got help. I reached out to the Atlanta Dyslexia Group. I threw a Hail Mary. I was so mad that they were not helping my kid. I wrote this epistle and I met the lovely ladies at Decoding Dyslexia Georgia because of that. And now I'm a huge active member in that group just because of my own frustration for my kid. So what can they do to work better? I'm going to give you the things that I do. This is what has helped me work well with my kids' teachers. Now, I'm going to fully admit we had to exercise our full due process rights as parents. I exercised my rights to the full extent under IDA, and did file due process against my district. And then my child ended up going to a remediation school for 2 years as a result of that. And then from that point forward, when my child moved back into a gen ed setting, which by the way, he's being super successful in. He got honor roll this year, guys, and I didn't know that was ever in the cards for him. And it was a goal he set for this year. And man, I went to 7th grade this year with him, by the way. It's what I feel like. I feel like we both earned honor roll because it was quite a hard year. It's a whole other story, but I'll get back on task here. But what do I do now that I'm in a healthy parent-teacher relationship? Because I didn't have a healthy one when I was in the prior setting. The teachers in that setting and the admin in that setting were not working with me to help my kids. So let's acknowledge that some schools are not doing the right thing. And so, and you can be, I was knowledgeable. I was filing state complaints. I was coming to the meeting. I was sending emails begging for accommodations that were written into my child's IEP already, and nobody was doing them. So, I mean, I was begging for structured literacy. I was getting balanced literacy. I was doing everything that you're supposed to do, and it didn't work. Flip side, I'm in a school setting now where we're there by choice. And my child and the teachers, I send an email at the beginning of every year, and it is my child's educational history. It's written like a letter to all his teachers, and it explains the journey that we have taken to get here and what has happened to him every year and why this year matters so much. And I invite them to be part of the next part of his journey. And with the hope that one day, I'm going to cry, with the hope that one day we're all at the end when he's a senior and we're all cheering because we were all a really positive part of getting him there. And then I put in there what he needs. I make sure they understand his disabilities. He has dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD, and developmental language disability. So he's got a lot going on that affects him. And if you're uneducated, you can make assumptions. That blank stare might look like he's being disrespectful or not listening. No, he's just processing, right? He needs some extra time to process. And so I just help them see that. I then offer, actually, now they just do it because they know me, but I don't know if I should be insulted or feel good about it. But we have a meeting at the beginning of every single 9 weeks, the whole team. So every teacher that teaches him, PE teachers, everybody that's going to have anything to do with my kid that year is in that meeting. We go through his plan and what he needs and what it looks like and kind of what worked last year and what we need to tweak this year and kind of what I expect and what I hope they should expect. And we do this every 9 weeks, not just once a year, but every 9 weeks. We're in constant communication with each other about like, this isn't working, or because he has anxiety really bad as a result of delayed interventions in his public school setting. We have a big conversation around like sometimes we need to deal with things a little more immediately. He can't wait all day for you to address an issue. Like if you got an issue with him, deal with it. If he starts asking lots of questions and becoming the Velcro child, that means he's anxious. You need to do something. So they just now have learned. And so we have this really great working relationship where I'm super honest. I've cried a lot still. It's not perfect, but they're honest. And we're working really closely to try to just move him toward a better, more independent version of himself every single year. And I think he's getting there. But he still has struggles, and he will forever be dyslexic. And he does have some pretty severe processing weaknesses. So, and he works harder than probably most kids in that building.
My dad always said I worked harder than all my other sisters in front of them.
Exactly. And I literally, I mean, I was going to say, Mallory, how hard they work and what a challenge it is. But I think that if you're so lucky to get into a positive space, help them see your child's struggle. Yeah. Just make it as real as possible so that they can. And then the few times we've had a sub or we kind of had a teacher change and we've had some rough moments, I have this standard email. It's a miniature version. And it's just in case you didn't know, these are the things that my child struggles with. Here's some links to help you learn more about that. And I will be happy to set up a time this week, hopefully before Friday, to discuss this with you. Let me know when you're available and just to get us back on the same page. So I don't let time go by, and it just feel like it works so much better. But that was not possible in our prior setting because we were really playing a really terrible game of chess to see. It's kind of like, we're not going to let you know how bad we're not following the law, and oops, you're calling us out. And then I was more determined to call them out, and it just wasn't working. So, at some point you're in advocate mode and you're fighting for your kid's life, and those little great perfect scenarios are not possible. But now that we're beyond that, I work so hard. I say, this is like nice Missy advocate. I got to keep her, push the bear down because I'm not trying to burn the building down. I really want this to work, and I really want to work with these people. This is a good situation. Their hearts are right. Nobody's perfect. But as long as we're willing to work together to move forward, I'm there. I'm all in, and I'm going to give you great gifts at the end of the school year. So.
Did the same thing. I would come to ours with cookies. I'd give great gifts at the end of the year. I made sure that my child delivered them to each teacher, even in high school. And they're like, Mom, nobody does this. I'm like, well, you do. And so I would make them. No, I feel, and maybe now my child wasn't, neither one of my any of my kids are aren't dyslexic, but there's different concerns. And the baby, for sure, she had a lot of things that made her look learning disabled. And I had a campus that she and I both attended, and they were having a difficult time separating Mrs. Rodenroth, the teacher, from Mrs. Rodenroth, my daughter's mother, right? And so I made a point of bringing in my husband when we had her ARDS so that they understand how to separate that. And they tried some shady stuff because they knew I worked for them and that I wasn't, they didn't think I'd raise a, as my daughter used to say, a fracas. And I don't think that's a word, but it sounds like a good word. But, and they didn't think I'd raise a ruckus. Oh, holy crap, I did. Holy crap, I raised a ruckus, so much to the point that when we changed to a new district, of course, that file follows her. Man, they were on me every single moment they needed to make a decision. Mrs. Rodenroth, we're just calling to make sure that you can attend this. Mrs. Rodenroth, we're going to change this in the IEP. Do you want a meeting to discuss this? Mrs. Rodenroth, I'm like, good God, I never got that kind of courtesy in this other place.
You know, I was thinking about, you both are talking as educators. There are people out there who aren't educators. Mallory, you two are an educator, as am I. But I think about our conversation that we had with Kareem Weaver, and he talked about how that parents really need to invest in their child financially, even if it's necessary, to get them everything that they need. And I think about how you are an advocate, you're a mama bear, and that's a wonderful thing, because you know all of the things, you know exactly what to do. Not everybody knows that.
Right.
So I think about his conversation. I think, gosh, that would be awesome if people could rally around and raise money to hire an advocate if they need to have somebody support them in these meetings and be there for their child in that way. Because the school does try, not every school, but some schools do try to pull the wool over somebody's eyes, like Aimee is talking about, or not fulfill their ends of the bargains, like Mallory's experience has led her mom
And
to find out.
There are
know.
families that can't. Like, I mean, the tutor that I had wasn't like the experienced dyslexia tutor, but she was enough for me at the time because my parents couldn't afford private school. So when my parents were like, okay, we can afford private school, I was in high school. And there was a very prestigious like Catholic school that a lot of our mutual friends went to, or my peers went to. And my parents were like, do you want to go here? And I was like, no, I will not get in. These kids are smarter than me. And at that point, they were, again, trusting the school. It's like, well, maybe they just can't help her. Like, there weren't a lot of like high school dyslexic private schools. But yes, but there are families that just can't afford advocacy, which is why I don't charge anyone. Like, I'm not.
That's great.
Oh, you're going to get 5,000 emails now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I tell people that I just want to be a neighbor to neighbor. So I am very upfront. It's like I have a full-time job. I won't be able to go to the meetings with you, but I'll tell you, I'll provide you with the information. I will make sense of your child's evaluation. I will tell you how the legal process works so that you're not you don't have something, pulled over you or the rug pulled out over under you, but I will help as much as I can. And so recently, like I posted, on social media, there was a parent who is a foster mom. And I was like, I will not charge you. I can have as many phone call conversations as you want. Happy to tell you my expertise and how I've helped other families in the neighborhood. But if you do need someone who can do more than I can recommend those people. So I'm very upfront of what I can and cannot provide, but I also think of my own family, like how I grew up. And I was like, we can't, because advocates nowadays are like lawyers, like they're getting like lawyers. And, sometimes that is needed, like Missy's story, like sometimes that is needed. But there was something that you said, I wanted to say this. So we talked a lot about like the system and like how they're not saying and doing a lot. And like, Aimee, I had a similar experience of when people would find out, like my employers would find out that I'm dyslexic, I actually got a lot of positive, but there was one where it was like my principal's boss or my principal's boss's boss. We were in this big meeting and I'm the dyslexia interventionist, and they were like, "Oh, you're only saying this because you're taking it too personal. It's because you're dyslexic." And they would blame it on me being dyslexic, that I was basically overly advocating, that I was asking for too much. And I was just like, now you're using my disability like against me, like against all these other kids. Like I thought that that would make me a better dyslexia interventionist because
That makes me so mad.
Yeah. So, but there are parents that I've talked to, like for like 2 years ago, I was helping a mom who got connected with me, who the school was saying your child needs to be retained at like second or third grade. I can't remember right now. And she was like, I signed the paper. I have to do it. And I was like, no, you can't. You don't have to. Like, do you want to? And again, it boggled my mind. It's like, you didn't like Google, like, do I have, like, what are the laws? Did you go and ask someone? She just was following what they were saying. And I was like, do you suspect dyslexia? She's like, I don't really know what that means. Okay, I understand. Let's start from the beginning. Asked her a bunch of questions. She's like, yeah, that sounds like my child. And so it frustrated me. I was so glad I could help this mom, because at the end of the day, the child was not retained and we got the kid tested within like 4 months and the child ended up being dyslexic. Now the kid's getting services.
Yay.
Big win. But I wanted to use her example as parents. Like, again, you've still got to do your part. Like, don't go in thinking that you can trust everyone. You got to do your part, because otherwise, like, it's just going to get worse, right? The child could have been retained, could have never been diagnosed. Years would have gone by and the child could have gotten a lot worse. And so I just tell parents, like, you do have a responsibility too. The schools, absolutely, they should be the ones educating and empowering you and giving you the resources, but that's not the reality. There are some teachers and schools that are doing a great job, and I commend them, and they're the example. But you also, as a parent, you got to do your job too.
Yeah. And I had a thought and it just flew out of my head, but yeah, exactly what you said. You've got to do the research behind and make sure, and there are a lot of districts doing the right thing, doing the thing that's best for the student. And then there's some places, not just districts, maybe it's just like little campuses.
Yes.
They're kind of doing, well, this has worked in the past, so we're just going to keep doing this. I can remember being at a district one time, moving into a position as a dyslexia therapist, and I'm looking at the kids on my roster, and I'm looking at their ages, and I'm like, gosh, this one's old for this grade level. Gosh, this one's really old for this grade level. Gosh, and I'm looking, and they were all retained at some point, and they were using retention as like an RTI thing.
Yeah. It's a problem solver. And I always say, if it didn't work the first time, why do you think it's going to work again?
I mean, it's slower and louder. That doesn't necessarily
more practice, right?
Right.
Yeah, more practice. Or there was a kid that I helped one time that was going to be retained and have the same teacher. And I was like,
oh, wow.
That's a bit better. I've had that happen before too, where they go, we're going to give him the same teacher he had last year because he's got a comfort level with her.
Comfort.
It's when your eye starts twitching and you're going, what?
And there's no evaluation that's been done, and there's no evaluation. Like,
yeah, but they'll use the summer birthdays
yes.
As a big one. And look, we could talk about retention. I feel like a whole nother podcast, but when it comes to someone who genuinely has a learning difference, that I have heard more stories how that has been a detriment than anything. They use, it's a summer birthday and they're a boy, so this will help them in sports later. No. They give all the excuses. But again, like, if your gut is saying, the mom wouldn't have reached out to me if her gut didn't say something. And again, I'm glad she did. And that was her way of like, I'm trying to advocate for my kid.
Right.
But there are other parents and it was because someone was like, you need to call Mallory. Like, you need to call Mallory. I can't explain it, but she can. But parents need to be like, I don't think this is the right answer, but I don't know how or what. I need to find someone.
Yeah.
Listen to that and run with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
So
that gut.
Miss,
That's that gut thing you were talking about, knowing your gut. I'm sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
no, I was just going to ask the next question because I really need to know, Missy, since you're in Georgia and I don't know much about what's going on there in Georgia. I would love to know what changes you feel like need to happen at the policy level to improve outcomes for the dyslexic students.
Oh yeah. I mean, for me, the yeah, goodness, where do I start? So like I mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of great laws on the books. So, but the problem is we're not seeing change happen at the pace that the law mandates.
Yeah.
And so that is really concerning because technically last year was when systems, according to the Early Literacy Act, should have, gotten a screener, a universal screener. This year was the dyslexia screener, and those are supposed to work together. We've had to do so much advocacy just to get something as basic as, were these screeners vetted properly, right? And then luckily we have a legislation that's working hard to hold our Department of Ed accountable, because our Department of Ed and our legislation are just not on the same page. So and we got those vetted. So now we have a small list that have been vetted, and we'll see what that looks like. We also have a clause that those will be reevaluated every 3 years. So as things change and we need to make better changes for Georgia. But what do I think needs to change? I would like to see, because currently our list of screeners is 5. Why can't we just have one screener? This is ridiculous.
Right.
It's just one screener. This is not a benchmark assessment. I just need to know, I'm taking the temperature of this kid, right? And I need to see where the red flags are. And I need to have some good data from this screener to know what to do next. So that we have a problem between knowing what to do with the screener. So we need some better, I would say really we need better guidance from our Department of Ed to all of our districts that want to have local control. Good for you. But let's also just talk about what's best practice. Best practice says, I just screened a kid. There's some red flags. I'm going to pull that kid and we're going to have a meeting about those red flags. And we're going to get a plan in place using some evidence-based instruction, maybe in a tier 2 setting or higher if needed. And then if the child is severe enough and the parents or someone else, actually ask for evaluations, we go ahead and move toward evaluations while we're collecting data from this intervention. We can do those things side by side. We have a bad habit of waiting 12 weeks
To fail.
doing testing. So
Mhm.
this just drags out the process. So, just I think for us, it's more about let's get some better guidance within our laws are good. Let's get some better guidance on what this looks like, best practice. Also, let's do a better job about communicating with parents. I'm pushing very hard for a communication plan that really gets a parent knowledge of where their child's weaknesses are. I think a parent deserves to know that your child has not mastered 50% of the phonological, they don't know 50% of their phonics, or
Right. Right.
their ability to match letters or sounds to letters is at 44%. And really what that means, like they haven't mastered any vowel teams. They haven't mastered any, 4 of the syllable types. Like this is where they are. And then this is the plan. This is the intervention we have. And this is the plan. And this is when we're going to communicate with you data from that plan every week or every 2 weeks. And this is when we're going to meet again. And if we don't see this by this point, this is the plan. I wish that we had a really good decision tree like that was created by our DOE as best practice. This is like, if you want to be a gold star district, you're going to do these things. This is how you're going to communicate. We do have a phenomenal district here in Georgia that I scream about all the time. It's Marietta City Schools. They do a phenomenal job at this. They test all their kids in the first 2 weeks of school. Those kids are already in groups of 10 by the second week of school for 90 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And your most severe children that need those intense interventions, everyone in the building's teaching reading. So everyone is trained to teach reading. So where your high flyers might get, a great teacher, but your struggling kids are going to get those most highly qualified instructors at more intense intervention. Everybody in this district cares about literacy. The bus drivers are driving down the road practicing, phonological their sounds, they're and
Nice.
the lunch ladies, and it is the the mandate of the whole district that literacy and safety are the two number one. So if we could get the guidance to create that for every district in our state, and then get coaches. We did get funding this year to get literacy coaches in the classrooms. I don't think it's enough funding. I think we need more, but we have this bad problem of training with no practicum and no classroom support. So if you're going to be an interventionist, you need to have training and you need a practicum. You need some level of someone saw you do this and they told you did it wrong and you got some course correction. And because we have a problem where kids are getting in intervention groups with poorly trained teachers and they're stuck forever in like the same level because the teacher doesn't know how to pace them forward or remediate backward. And there's this constant like, let's just stay here because you're stuck on one skill. So we're just going to camp out here forever on, soft G because you just can't seem to get it. Well, that's not really going to help the kid. They might be able to master some future skills while you keep working on this persistent little problem. And so we just have, for us, I think it's more about long-term plan for better guidance and implementation and accountability. Mallory and I were talking about accountability earlier, just this ability to see, are the districts that we're funding actually doing the things they're supposed to be doing? And is it translating into proficient readers? And if it's not, there should be some plans to support that and fix that.
Do you guys have a dyslexia handbook there in Georgia?
We do, and it is modeled after the Texas handbook. It's a phenomenal handbook. It is a great one. If you go in and type in Georgia Dyslexia Handbook, you'll see that it might feel very familiar. And this year, part of our legislation, HB 538, which was a combination bill to take our early literacy bill and our dyslexia bill and put it into one big bill to make it comprehensive, includes that bill will be distributed by the superintendent to every administrator and teacher in every district at the beginning of every school year. That was something I pushed hard for because I had too many meetings where people don't even know we have a handbook. And then my understanding in Texas, the handbook is very well known and very popular. People can quote it. We're not there yet. So that was kind of, I was channeling my inner Mallory, my Texas friends while I was in that meeting. And I was thinking, we got to get people to know this. And I was just in an IEP meeting a few days ago, and I maybe in my more mama bear mode said, did y'all know we have a handbook? And here's the link. And I think you guys all might want to read it before our next meeting. It has a great decision tree in it that could help us make better decisions for this child. Because I feel like right now we're using our opinions a lot and not what is mandated by the law. So yeah, we do. And it's great, but it's only as good as people who open it up and read it and use it. So yeah.
When I go to art, we call them ARDs here in Texas. When I go to ARDs, I tell principals, they know that there's a Texas Dyslexia Handbook. I'm like, just download it and make it a little thumbnail folder on your desktop, your laptop, whatever you have, so that you can always access it. I mean, it's a free document. It's a free document. It's not going to cost you any money to download it. And listening to you speak, I was actually kind of taking a couple of notes because my brain went elsewhere, and I'm not going to biographize because I know everybody gets tired of that. But I'm thinking about parent education. What do we need to do to support our parents? We need to inform our parents of what their rights are as a parent and a child in public or charter. We need to inform our parents about the process outside of the ARD, right? What's going to happen. And oh no, and now I can't read what I put down here. And how to support the child. I was like, super child. I left the T off. How to support the child, or what avenues you can use to support the child, and I don't think our parents understand completely still what that can look like. And then I also don't know if parents, after like dyslexia intervention has been provided, what happens after a curriculum, and I think that's a big question mark in a lot of parents' heads afterwards,
Well, I will say that a lot of what you said, Missy and I have presented on and will be like, the one about supporting secondary students, that one I think is one of our favorites because we actually touched on if they have finished an intervention program, what happens? We talk about appropriate accommodations and setting them up for post-secondary. And like I said, I strongly, advocate now for that 504 transition and what's the difference between, when they're in high school, 9th through 12th, and then if they want to go to college, what questions to ask, all those things, like you said. And like the presentation we're giving at Learning Ally, is it next week?
Yeah.
Oh wow, starting next week, is about, I will say it's not really for the therapist, but it is for your gen ed teachers. There's a lot of teachers who are like, okay, I know something and I know I need more, but how can I empower my parents more? So we even talk about the stages of grief for a parent when they find out their child has a learning difference, because I was definitely the source of blame. So I don't really just go ahead and tell everyone I'm dyslexic. I feel like there's a time and place. I will say that I'm never shy to say it, but I don't like wear it as a badge, when I go around. Well, I was dyslexia interventionist a few years ago, and there was I was sending home mastery checks. It was like a benchmark, like mastery check at the beginning of the year. And I write my checks backwards. It has nothing to do with my dyslexia. I am not left-handed. It is something my mom said I started when I was a kid, and I just kept it. So it's just one of those things that I do. Well, the parent came back and said, I noticed that your check marks are backwards. I was like, yeah, it's just, something I do, And he's like, well, are you dyslexic? And I said, I am actually. The parent said that I was incompetent to teach his child because I was dyslexic, which, if you think about it, the child's dyslexic. So you're also saying that your child's incompetent. And I know that's not what he meant either way. And I had just learned from a different conference about the stages of grief for a parent. And I was very much, I did not take it. It was easier for me to not take it personally because I learned that. And I was like, and literally I wanted to say this out loud, but in my mind, I was like, oh, you're in the blame stage. Got it. Okay. But it gave me more empathy too, because I was like, okay, we're not at each other. We're not attacking each other. We're not at war with each other. How can I work with you? And so after a few meetings, and even when I was asked to not attend, which, okay, the parent didn't want me to attend, I gave all the data. Some of it I put regular check marks. And the student actually advocated and said, Miss Lattanze is the only one trying to help me how to learn how to read. I want to stay in her class, because he was at the point he wanted to take him out of my class. So all to say is, I totally agree, Aimee. There was a lot of parent education, but I think it also starts with empowering your teachers on how to empower your parents, because they're the ones that are in front of those parents more than we are. We're kind of like that extra layer of like, okay, I can't help you, but go to Mallory or go to Missy. So we're hoping that the more, advocacy work we can do, it'll help.
Yeah, no, I think advocacy, it has different tiers of
Yes.
support that can be offered to parents, to teachers, to admin, to just kind of inform their decision making. I'm looking at our questions, and we've answered a lot of these in some way, shape, or form, but there's one that is sticking out to me that I want to touch on. What do you say to schools that says we don't do labels?
Oh, can I go?
Yeah, let's hear it.
You go, and then I want to after.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Listen, I know this is a hot button topic. It just is in general. The whole conversation with special ed in general and labels is just such a hot button topic. But okay, a couple of things, because I was thinking of this one. The first one is, a label is really just a book, a title of a book that you can open to help you know where you need to go. And we know that within labels, let's just start with dyslexia. Within dyslexia, it is a spectrum. Some kids are very dyslexic, we say, and some are mildly dyslexic. And so, but kids that are dyslexic too. Like there's a reason why there's a category, because there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of similar profiles. Some are just more, a little more hard. Some are harder to remediate, or persistent patterns of weakness, but also patterns of strength. So we know. So for me, the label is, when a school says this, I'll say, well, how can you properly, first of all, identify this child, and then secondly, support this child? If we don't know what's going on, right, and we don't understand that within dyslexia, these characteristics, because they're in this label, need this type of intervention or this type of support. All children who have struggles might have similar or overlap of weaknesses and patterns of weaknesses, but there's something about knowing that it's stemming from dyslexia that's critical for you to know to support this kid. Secondly, we don't do labels. Well, I'm sorry, but IDA says you will. This is my favorite one. One of the first things I learned when I was advocating for my child is I would say dyslexia, and they would literally just ignore me or say specific learning disability in reading, and they didn't want to have that conversation. And well, there's a Dear Colleague letter that was written several years ago that actually tells schools not only can, but you should say dyslexia. And dysgraphia and all the other titles that we need to say and labels we need to say, because it's a critical beginning point for this child to get the intervention they need. If I don't say dyslexia, then it kind of opens up my child to, well, I'm just going to let you read some more. I'm going to put you in a circle and we're going to do some round robin reading. We're going to do some fluency. We're going to ignore the foundational weaknesses that are stemming from maybe a phonological processing deficit or a morphological processing deficit, or or whichever one it is. Or sometimes for some kids, it's all the above. Right. So you're going to end up not properly supporting this child. So when we say we don't do labels, I'm sorry. No, we do labels. And it also helps us understand that children, I think the other part of this was about the kids just fine, or they're doing fine.
Yeah, they're fine.
Actually, yeah, or they'll catch up. We're just going to do a little more of this. It actually helps us peel that back and go, no, this, because they have dyslexia, they're not going to be doing fine if we don't intervene now, if we don't do something now, because we know that this is stemming from a processing deficit, a weakness in a particular foundational skill or skills, and it's going to need an intensive intervention from a highly trained professional to help them do better and help support them in the school. And if we don't do that, it is more likely that our children are what happened to my child? It's going to be, oh, let's try reading and recovery. Oh, let's put you in a room. Oh, this teacher's going to use LLI now, just more balanced literacy, because all they could see was my child couldn't comprehend, and they were working on comprehension. And I was like, but you don't understand. He can't comprehend because he can't read fluently. You know why he can't read fluently? Because he can't decode. And so you've got to understand those things in order to better support them. And also, one last thing, and then I'll be quiet and I'll let Mallory talk, but I think this is really important. We say labels because there is nothing wrong with being dyslexic. Now, dyslexia is hard. I mean, and it has been hard for our family, and it's been hard for my child. And I wish that I could remove some of the obstacles he's been through. It's not fun to watch your child suffer. It's not fun to watch your child work so hard and then fail something the next day. It's just gut-wrenching sometimes. However, because we know it's dyslexia, I can remind him over and over, you have dyslexia. It's not an excuse. However, it's an explanation. It helps you know why you do this. And it helps us know the kinds of teachers we need for you. And it helps us know what to tell your teachers about you so they can support you. If I didn't know it was dyslexia and I can't say that, then it's like, well, have fun. He's got some things going on that we can't talk about, And also, we don't do this for any other category of special education. If you have autism, if you have a cognitive, a delay, maybe you have Down syndrome, maybe with some other, we say all those. Why in particular can we not say these learning disabilities? There's specific names. There's power in the name. There's help in the name, and there's so much understanding in the name. So, and there's advocacy and education in the name. It helps me tell others what you need to know to support my kids. So I'll get off my soapbox now. I feel like I just
I love that.
I love it. Yeah.
That statement. We name everything else. Why don't we talk about dyslexia? Good point. Why? That's mind-boggling to me. Sorry, Mallory, I'm stepping on your time.
No, it's okay. No, it's all good. Okay. So I'll echo a little bit what Missy said, and then I have a part B, I guess you could say, to all this. So I shared my story. I was FLD reading. And so, yes, I have played the what if game in my life. What if they gave me the dyslexia label? Would I have gotten the actual like support that I needed? I think with all the information I had, no, because Georgia wasn't there yet. But it did put this stigma in Georgia where it's like we can't say dyslexic or dyslexia. So Missy mentioned that there was a bill that went into effect in 2019, but it was like passed by the Senate, I believe, in 2018. My dad actually saw it in the news, and I was in Texas, saw it hit the news in Georgia, and text messaged me saying, I emailed every senator that voted yes and thanked them, said, it's too late for my daughter, but thank you for now saying dyslexia for every other child. Because my dad is dyslexic. He's undiagnosed, but trust me, he is. And that's where I get it from. And so I've had a lot of thought about the what if game and what if I really did get the label. I can't play the what if game right now, but you know, I had my wonderings. But it's interesting. Yes, there are schools that don't, and you know, like I said, and I have that experience. But I have been a teacher in charter and private. I've been in, and what I've seen is again, it goes back to parents. The parents have a really hard time with the labels, and I still encounter that, and those are the hardest to advocate for because they're not on board yet, and it's a delicate dance. Like it's and so they have so much fear of like, I don't want my kid labeled. Because I've actually worked with kids. It's like, I don't want to be labeled as the sped kid. I didn't either. Trust me. I was with kids that had lower cognitive profiles. I had to be pulled out of all my classes and get all these tutors. But I don't know, maybe it's because I had really supportive parents and they're like, this doesn't define you. And I used to say, well, you can label me as a brunette girl. That's a label. I'm a Hispanic girl. I'm a woman. Like I have all these labels that are about me, and dyslexia is just one of them, right? And so, but I find the stigma with the labels is more in parents, unfortunately, than in schools. If it's schools, it's more policy. Like where Georgia took a while to, I think the bill, Missy, correct me if I'm wrong, was say dyslexia bill.
It was, yeah.
And so they literally wouldn't say it. So I think it trickled down to the schools not saying it. But the parents, it's like here in Texas, we say it, like it's more common. And now I'm just like, you know, I feel like I'm beating my hands on the table talking with these parents. And I'm like, I understand that you have hopes and dreams for your child, but we can get them there if we can get them the intervention. And just, you know, they're just so wrapped around this label of, and so they have to go to the prestigious private schools because that's how they're going to get into college. You know, it's like, I didn't go to UGA, I went to Alabama, and I'm still a smart person, okay? But, so have you ever heard of the Holland poem?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. So it's basically about, it's about Holland, and it's a poem, but basically it's about taking a trip, and you have all these expectations on what your trip's going to be. And it's the same journey as a parent. You have all these expectations that your child is going to be, and you have all these hopes and dreams, and then all of a sudden your trip takes a detour. So now your child, again, it's like a metaphor, your child has been diagnosed with dyslexia. So the trip is now different. The journey is different, but that doesn't take away the beauty and the adventure that you're going to have. And so I used to have it like posted, and coincidentally, one of my coworkers, we were talking about it, and we were talking about the Holland poem. And I was like, okay, so now that summer is here, I worked 12 months. I worked throughout the school year, and I'm like, I'm going to get it, and I'm going to get it printed, and I want that in my school. And we don't really have that problem in my school with parents because they're coming to us. They're over the stigma. but it's a good reminder, and maybe they can share it with another family. But it's really beautiful because that's all it is. It's just a different journey, and it would be a boring world if we were all the same. And I do know that there are some people who think that dyslexia, it's like, if I had a wish, there wouldn't be dyslexia. I have a really hard time, like, of saying that I wish I never had dyslexia, because I really love the person that I am. And I feel like, because if you knew me, what I didn't say in my story is I was a very anxious kid. I never went to slumber parties. I hated going on field trips. I had really, really bad anxiety. The performance anxiety went into social anxiety. And so no one thought I would go away for college. Everyone thought I'd be stuck at home for the rest of my life. And then I moved to New Zealand, and I moved to all these different states. And they're like, who is this girl? And it's because of my journey through dyslexia. And so I feel like if I didn't have it, maybe I wouldn't have been an anxious person, but I don't know, maybe I would have had a more boring life. Like I'm very proud of it. I do think of it as my superpower. So yes, it caused a lot of pain, and Missy talked about, like, it caused a lot of pain, and it affects more than just a person, but the family dynamics. But there are a lot of other sufferings, and I rather have taken that journey than something else.
And you
I was
mentioned
just going to say too that there is a very important thing to recognize is when we don't give the child labels, they don't get that success. And I have students who got the label. They are National Honor Society students. They are graduates of college. They are people who got nominated for the Duke TIP program in 7th grade just based on their reading scores alone. There are people that have great success. And there are people that go through college and not National Honor Society students, but they still go to college and they still live successful lives, and they're happy individuals. And if they didn't have that, you have to think about the pipeline to prison system that we have to have in the back of our minds if we don't provide the proper literacy interventions when they need to be provided. And that is what happens when we give children labels. And I think that's what a lot of schools don't remember, or a lot of parents don't think about. They don't think about that long term, and it's no fault of their own. They might just not see it through an educator's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about, because I hear about the dyslexia is my superpower thing, and just that automatic dyslexia label doesn't mean, you're Superman, you can do anything. You have to be trained, but I think the superpower that dyslexia truly gives you is that perseverance and
Yes.
thinking outside the box,
Oh,
because
yeah.
you have to learn. And I always say my dyslexic students are my hardest working students, always. And I know that's only who I work with. But, when I was thinking about my own children growing up and how easily reading came to them, and I used to think, uh-oh, there's got to be a struggle somewhere, or if they're going to think everything's easy for the rest of their lives. And I
Yep.
had one that approached it that way too, so I understand
So
that.
what?
Go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead, Amy. I was just going to ask the next question. Sorry.
Sorry, it made me think some of what Mallory was saying. I was writing it down. There's a documentary called The Big Picture, and it's like 12 years old, right? So, and it's about dyslexia. It's by Robert Redford's brother, I think. But his wife is in it. It's about his wife, who is a teacher, and his son, Dylan. That's it, because I remember he misspelled his name. Dylan. And then a bunch of other people kind of highlighted. But the mom's named Carl Redford, and she was talking about when she found out, it was almost kind of described it a little bit like it was a death of her plans. She goes, "We had big plans when he was born. I'm an educator. He's a smart kid. We were going to go out and conquer the world, and not that dyslexia killed that. He went on to college. He went on to a very prestigious college, but it just kind of took a different route for a while. So if anybody hasn't seen that, it's about 12 years old. You probably go on HBO or Cinemax or something and go watch that. But it's a really good, and I thought it was it made me, I always try to make connections to what our speakers are saying, and Mallory, it made me think of that movie, because that stood with me so much so that I can quote what the mom said. We were going to go out and conquer the world. And then this came along. So I'm sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
Yes. So I was just going to ask you too, what gives you hope right now for the fight for better identification for dyslexia and or interventions? So Mallory or Missy, whoever wants to start. But I would like to hear from both of you.
Yeah.
You go first, Missy.
You want me to go first? Okay. It's so funny because Mallory and I have been talking about hope, and it's popping up in one of our next presentations, and I'm always hopeful. I think this is actually what drives me is this either innate or naive, I don't know what you want to call it, or this big desire for there to be hope that this will change, hope that one day every kid will get what my kid got through a fight, but without a fight. That's the hope. So where do I see glimmers of that? Glimmers of hope are in my favorite glimmer of hope is the teacher that I mentioned earlier that called me that one day to tell me that Matthew knew something that morning and didn't know it later and failed the encoding test. And she was crying. Y'all, she's gone on to get her dyslexia specialist.
Oh.
She is trained now in Orton Gillingham, and she's later in her career too. This is not like she's a starting off career. She's later. She's got probably retirement on the horizon, but she cares so much. And even though she didn't have all the perfect skills that she needed to really help my kid, her desire to do the right thing, even when she didn't have the training, like during the pandemic, we were up one night texting each other, Googling free decodable books because our system had none. So we were I was trying to help her do her job better, and she was trying to help my child, and we were a team. So we both didn't know anything about what we were talking about at that moment in our lives, but we were learning and we were trying, and she's gone on to do that. So, and I keep meeting people like her, in the middle of some of the conversations, and I always try to be very careful here because I love teachers. And even though I fault a system, it doesn't mean I don't love teachers. And even though I bumped into some teachers that it's hard for me to talk about today. There's more like, and I'll just say her name because she won't care, Miss Hyatt. And Miss Hyatt gives me hope. And there's more people like Miss Hyatt. And I have hope in the people who are sitting in IEP meetings, who are staying curious versus locking down. And even if they don't feel like they can be comfortable in the meeting, they're sending someone my name and saying, you should chat with Missy, right? Like you should reach out to this person, this underground railroad of dyslexia, right? You should go find her because she can help you interpret some of these scores or fight for the right thing for your kid or, get your kid where they need to be. So I have hope that wherever a teacher is right now, that's willing to stay curious, that's willing in their own way to fight, even if the system is not set up for them to actually fight publicly. I have hope. And I have hope that for the first time ever, we are so lucky in Georgia to have legislators who are former educators, who are at the forefront of our bills, who are listening. I mean, we have this freshman senator this year in Georgia that carried our bill to ban reading recovery, but he worked with a legislator from last year that carried our other bill, and it was a bipartisan bill. In this world, there's none of that. So it's a bipartisan bill because they prioritize children learning to read. If you can't all lock hands around that, so I have hope that there's one issue in this whole world that we can lock hands on and we can agree on. We know that kids need to learn to read and we need to remove things. And to have the senator on the floor, he read a letter that I wrote for my child on the floor as a way to fight for this bill. And then even just recently when he reached out and congratulated my son for making honor roll. Yeah, he didn't have to do that, but it's personal to him because he's a former educator. And what a great role model for so many of our educators in the trenches to have someone openly at this top level saying these things. Maybe they'll feel hopeful now moving forward and they'll step out of the dark shadows and start saying more and advocating more in the trenches. So I have more hope today than I did yesterday. And I can't help but think that that's the only thing we've got to hold on to keep us advocating. Without hope, advocating is really depressing because it's like a terrible roller coaster that never ends.
Yep.
And so that's my hope. Mallory, I'll toss it to you.
Yes, I definitely have hope. I mean, I don't think that we could be in this position if we didn't have hope. But I think, with Soul to Story podcasts and just all these other podcasts, including your own, there's so many more accessible avenues for people. Like, I'm that weird person who does not listen to music in their car. I only listen to podcasts. And it's amazing to think that as busy moms that they can just, turn on the podcast while they're driving from like point A, point B, point C, all the way to Z, in their busy lives, that they have more access, right? And all these other resources. But I know I joke around with like UJ and Alabama, but I am so proud of University of Alabama and how far they've come. I truly did cry when I found out that they are developing COUTS, and
Nice.
it just was like, wow, like for a school to be like, I don't know what to do with you. And I don't even remember who that person was. I don't remember what they look like. They were just doing their job, right? But that gives me hope. It's like, okay, and the things that Georgia has done, the Say Dyslexia bill, that brought tears to my parents' eyes.
Yeah.
And so we are making progress. And even Texas, could we do a lot more? Absolutely. I would not be advocating here in Texas if I thought everything was hunky dory.
Right.
But I think that we have a lot of great listeners, as much as just as equal as we have a lot of talkers and movers and shakers, because I think you definitely have to have a balance of both. I really do try to surround myself with people who are smarter than me. I'm very fortunate to have met Missy. I love surrounding myself where I can learn more from someone else. I think that just because we have different lived experiences doesn't mean that you can't learn more. Missy and I were talking earlier, and I was like, I need to know more about this. I have a question about this. I need a specific example. And it's because I'm hungry for not only the perspective, but like what am I missing here so that I can learn more. And it's just amazing. So there is hope. There's a lot of people that I think parents and teachers, educators, admin can go to. And so in an age where I grew up and my mom's like, where do I go? And had limited resources, knowing how much is out there now. And it's funny. So quick story. So I was talking with my mom about this kid, and they got newly diagnosed, and the parent is still grappling with this diagnosis and understanding it. And my mom somehow was like, you know what? I bet when the child is in third grade, they're gonna learn, because that's when it gets harder. I said, Mom, how do you know that? She goes, yo. And I go, but how did you know it was third grade? And she was basically saying that what we say, you're reading to learn now, And she didn't have those words, but the fact that she was like, third grade is a pivotal moment. I was just like, look at you, Mom, you're an advocate too. And so, the fact that she can have conversations with other parents too, with her experience and what I've shared with her is really powerful too. And I think it empowers her too, since she thought that she wasn't doing enough, but she really was.
That's
I
awesome.
love that we have these podcasts and all these avenues for learning, because we
Yes.
didn't have this when my son was younger, and I didn't know what I know now even. So I just feel like I'm grateful for the people that are coming up through the schools now to have that available to them. And I hope to just be another source that can give information, and I can learn from all of you guys that come on the podcast and share more information. So
Yes.
it's really cool.
Okay, so I'm going to ask another question. Okay. So say you get on the elevator and there's like maybe teachers that don't buy into what dyslexia is, or principals or admin or whoever. What is your elevator pitch? Your 30, gosh, what elevator is 30 seconds? I don't know. But say
15
you're going from
seconds.
0 to 60. I don't know. But say you have a 30-second elevator pitch. What would you say to them to kind of maybe help drive a change?
I'm gonna say that I'm gonna hit the emergency button. It's, I feel like, so just knowing that they're in there, they don't spark a question. You just know you're in an elevator with educators and admin.
That maybe don't really trust in what dyslexia is, or think it's just
Dyslexia is not a
been
thing.
told it's a fad before.
Okay. Um, I would actually not use my personal story, and I would say I was like, oh, I'm an educator, and I definitely, have been around kids, and other educators who thought that, and guess what? And I would share my experience as a teacher. Then I kind of segue into my personal story, because I do find that if you share your personal story first, they do all go straight to, oh, this is just personal. So I try not to go that route at first, and come from an educator. So it's educator to educator. And so I feel like I'm on the spot, but that's the whole point, right? You're on the spot in an elevator. It would probably come out more natural in the elevator, and I might be, like I said, tempted to hit the emergency button to lock us in there. But I think just finding some common ground at first. And I do like to be thought provoking. So have you ever thought about this? Have you considered this? I think it comes across not so attacking that way. And then you just kind of see where it flows to. And then I would be that person that gets off on the same floor and keeps walking with them. I have tended to do that. I have been to conferences where I don't even go to my session, and I just keep following the person. And I'm like, yeah, I was supposed to go here the entire time. You're following me, not me following you. But yeah, so I guess that's.
I love it. No, I think that's great. I know I kind of put you on the spot with that question. So, Missy, you've had like a couple of minutes to think. What you say?
Okay, I'm gonna go. Well, first of all, I kind of did something like this before during the legislation season this year. I happened to catch someone's speech because he was enlarging on his phone how he was going to speak in favor of 3Qing. And so I changed my speech to make his speech not work, and it worked. Later, he tried to talk to me about 3Qing, and I just said, I don't really have time for this today. Because you seem to have like zero knowledge of why it's not helpful, but I'd be happy to follow it with you. But if I was on this elevator, this is what I would do. Hey guys, I love data. So I would start with what's the percentage of kids in your district that are not proficient readers? Yeah. And then I would probably let them know, well, I probably know why a certain percentage of those kids aren't reading. And I actually know if you did for this 1 in 5, for the rest of the kids that aren't proficient readers, even all the kids that actually might even already be proficient readers, you might actually see, I can probably almost guarantee, based on what I've seen other districts do, at least 3 here in Georgia have done this, you might begin to see your percentages go up. Because I know that district leaders love to brag about what they're doing, and that data talks, right? And so, and it also would be a great way for us to not have to wrap up data in fancy little ways to try to make it look better than it is. You can just put it out there for what it is. So I would start with data. Your data says you've got too many kids that can't read, probably over 50% if you're like most counties here in Georgia. So I've got a solution for you. And that, I think what I hit so hard, and we've done this a lot with Code Dyslexia, is that we are very locked in on dyslexia, but we know that what we do for dyslexics will work for every kid. And so that high percentages of students, based on Nancy Young's ladder of reading, need structured literacy. Only a very few small amount don't. So if we flip the switch here and we tailor the instruction to the masses, everyone benefits and no one's harmed. Right now, few people are benefiting and many are being harmed. So you can change that with this simple change. And then I might throw in, while you're getting your teachers trained, why don't you hop in those trainings too? Yeah. Because it'll be a lot easier for you to take them somewhere that you're also going with them, right? Yeah. And when you go into their classrooms and you start to see what this looks like, you'll actually know if it's the right thing or the wrong thing. And maybe take a cue from Mallory. Get some people in there who've done this before, who are smarter than you, and get them to be part of your solution, and y'all learn together. So look at your data, change your instruction, get some training, and just keep it very like action item oriented. I've also learned that a lot of these people in the high places don't seem to have time sometimes to hear everything I want to say. So I really try to just hit those things. If I got more time, I would share my story too, though, because I have found that sharing my story has been very effective. And it's really hard to look at a parent of a child that you failed and say you're not going to change something. So,
Right.
so we don't have to keep doing this. We can change this.
Right.
I
Very
like
good.
what Missy said.
I'm the data queen, data or it didn't happen. So
Well, like I'm a very data-driven person. I was like, why didn't I think of that? I should have let you go first.
Oh, no, I like both avenues, quite
That's
frankly.
good.
You know, I think we should write up a handbook and put our 30-second elevator pitch in there with if they say this, you know, there's your flow chart. If they say this, you say this. If they say
Yeah.
this, you say that, you
I
know.
love it. I love it. It's like a debate. Like, I love that.
Yes. Dyslexia debate.
I love it. I love it. Brilliant.
So where can the listeners go to learn more about dyslexia from you guys? I mean, you guys are amazing. You have so much information and you're just a wealth of knowledge. So where do you recommend people go to learn more, connect and support the work you're doing?
So I'm not as active on social media as Missy is, but I am on X. So
Oh.
it's at Big City Dyslexic because I'm a dyslexic in a big city. So Big City Dyslexic. I do try to post. That's probably the one place I try to post the most. And then my LinkedIn page. But I will also say, since I'm president of HBIDA, we have started a blog. So as far as we're trying to become, I guess, connect more with their community. So the HoustonIDA.org. You can find, I did do a president's blog letter, I guess you could say, like beginning of the year. And you can see all of our great work. We have what's called Hire a Speaker. So so it's me and two others. And so there's others that are not listed on there. But if you are a public school, private school, charter school, even if you're just a small community of moms that are like, we want to get together at our church and learn more, the funds go directly to the Houston branch. So it's you hire us, but the funds do not go to us. It goes to Houston IDA. And so you can see a list of our topics. And so that has actually taken off. I'm really excited about it because we feel like we want to be the source of information and advocacy for you guys. And then, yeah, Missy can tell more about hers, but we do present a lot. So if you just follow either one of us, you can see when and where we present. We got 2 this summer. So next week, Learning Ally. So we'll presenting, and then we will be in Plano, so very close to the Dyslexia Duo at the Region 10 Summer Dyslexia Institute. So Missy and I will be reunited in person again, and it'll be our first like on stage in person that her and I do. We've done a lot of virtual, so we're
You
really
know what
excited.
time y'all are presenting?
That's a great question.
Time? I don't think they've done a
We do-
schedule yet, have they?
I think they just did. I haven't looked at it. So we actually are presenting on day 1 and day 2. We broke up. So we are doing the supporting secondary students. And so we divided into instructional on day 1 and then advocacy on day 2.
Nice.
So we were talking throughout your podcast about like even kids that are done with intervention, what do you do? All that's going to be incorporated, very instructional, but also, there's a big advocacy piece for self-advocacy. So we'll be presenting twice.
Okay,
Nice.
just for clarification for the listening audience, learningally.org, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And it's their training.
Spotlight
It's
on
their-
Spotlight on
dyslexia,
dyslexia.
Yeah, it's their annual Learning Ally Dyslexia Conference.
And this is
Okay.
the 10th anniversary. So this is a
Yes.
pretty big one. So we have some pretty cool keynotes coming this year. And it's always great. So much information.
Oh, yeah.
I love it because it's practical. You walk away you get the inspiration and then you get the practical and a great little networking opportunity as well. Lots of fun. They have a fun virtual way to connect during the conference as well, which is really nice. You can follow me. I'm on Twitter too at Missy Purcell. I also have something I launched last year at Miss Purcell Advocates on Instagram, and then at Miss Purcell on Facebook, and that's Miss MISS. And those are just places where I share nuggets of information regarding dyslexia or also your rights under IDA and special education. And I this old dog can learn new tricks. I've learned how to make a reel or two, and I will tell you, they're literally my way of responding to what I literally experience inside of meetings on the ready. So
Wow.
it's all inspired by real life moments. So it's so if you're
Are you
following
acting them
like
out?
what?
Are you acting them out
No,
or?
no, no.
No,
Just
they're like
so
memes.
funny,
They're
you know,
like
the
really
meme.
funny memes. Like,
Yes.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, wow,
So
and I'm gonna go right now and go.
but
go
yeah,
there.
you should follow her Facebook reels. They make my day. It's like a ritual now that I always have to check them every day because yes, you will make a lot of connections.
It's funny because someone said to me one day, "Oh, you're just so funny. You make up all the," and I'm like, "No, this is really like I'm experiencing this, or a parent that I'm helping is experiencing this, where I walked through this as a parent when I was advocating for my child." So, and I do throw a couple of those on TikTok as well, if you want to follow over there. But my whole goal there is just to bring awareness around why we need to identify, why we need to support, and why we need to actually follow the law when it comes to our kids. So I use humor to do that sometimes, but also I'll pack a little punch with just some quotes. I love to quote, smart people like Mallory. And I may know more about some of the laws and stuff, but Mallory has got me beat all day when it comes to being a cult. And I think cults are amazing. And I want to loop back around really quick and say, I wish Georgia could take a note from Alabama. We are not there yet, but that's a dream of mine. Maybe Mallory will make that dream come true one day. Maybe she'll be part of that solution. But yeah, follow us. Like she said, Learning Ally. We're doing great things with them. Follow us on our socials, LinkedIn. We're on there as well. You can always reach out. We're always happy. We do, like she said, we're often helping people, no strings attached. It's just it's our way of paying it forward in this space, just to support people. We at some point were somewhere where we needed help, and people came along and helped us, and we learned and grew, and that's really what we want to do with what we know. So and then if you pop into social media, there's so many other great people. I could go on forever, but we have so many heroes in that space who were
Yeah.
really
Find your own Mallory and Missy.
Yes.
Who's her name?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I don't think that's possible. I think y'all are fair.
You guys are so kind. We're so glad that we could do this. This was fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Melissa, you want to ask your magic question?
Sure. Okay, sure. If you had one wish that you could grant for our students, what would it be and why? Whoever wants to start.
I'll go.
Yeah.
I'll give you more time this time, Mallory. So
Okay.
I had more time last time. If I had one wish for our students, it would be that they would have a teacher every year who understands dyslexia and can fully support them. That there's a quote out there. I won't be able to quote it, but it's just the power of a knowledgeable teacher in dyslexia, the impact they have on students. Just truly understand dyslexia and just being able to help that child not make assumptions, not, but really just give them what they need. That would be my wish, because the teachers that we've run into like that have really been game changers. Miss Backus is our version of that, and she will forever be the person who changed my son's life completely around. So that everyone's like her. They have the training and the heart, and they can support the kids.
So I'll choose something different, but I have to say, I was going to say the same thing. And mine was Miss Warner. So Mrs. Warner, my fifth grade teacher. But the more and more I've grown to be an advocate in my adult life, the more I appreciated my parents.
Mhm.
So my wish is that there are supportive parents who don't stop, like how Missy is, but who do the research, but also like accept the label but also don't make it their entire life. Like there were definitely moments in my life that I did not feel like the dyslexic kid. I had a normal childhood. It wasn't just about me and the sped classroom. Like, a lot of people actually didn't know. And so I kind of really appreciated the balance. I don't know how my parents did it, but they just let me be a kid, but also were very, very, like, they prioritized me getting the help that I needed at the same time. I think that's how I slowly grew out of my anxiety. And so I don't know how they did it. My mom and dad are really phenomenal, but however they did it, it worked because I sometimes see other kids and like when parents stay in that blame stage or the denial and the stigma, I just am like, man, I'm so happy that I had the parents that I had or still have.
Yeah.
I love that.
Parents are so instrumental in all of this, and you guys have been wonderful to recognize that role that they play and to help them along the way and go the battle with them. It's just amazing what you guys are doing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, my goodness, this has been good night, Irene. We've been doing this for a while. Really appreciate you giving up quite a substantial chunk of time on a Sunday
Yes.
to talk with us. And we cannot thank you enough. I think y'all are ending our season.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
We
y'all
feel
are
honored.
our season 1 ending show. So thank you for agreeing to do this. I really appreciate it. Melissa really appreciates it. Our audience appreciates everything that you do. So we're going to close it out. This is Aimee,
And Melissa,
and we're the
Dyslexia
Dyslexia Duo.
Duo.
I'll see you next time. Bye.
Okay.